welcome. We're at the Langley Centennial Museum. I'm Melissa. I am a docent here at the museum. I have been docenting as an educator for, 10, 13, I'm not even sure because it's so much fun and I just keep coming on back. Today we will be walking through the Noel Booth General Store. And with me I have another docent.
Hi, my name is Midori. I'm also a docent at the Langley Centennial Museum. I first became a docent in the mid-1990s, had to take a break, and I missed it so much I came back a few years ago to join the docent program again. And we are outside the general store, as Melissa mentioned, which is one of my favorite exhibits in the museum, and we do use it in our school programs. So, Melissa, are you ready to go into the general store?
Let's go. Hi guys, we're in the general store now. As you can see, it's a tiny little room within the museum, but it is actually quite reminiscent of what the general store would be back in your grandparents' day, your great-grandparents' time. So we have different sections of the store. And why don't we start on your side of the store, Midori?
Well, first of all, Melissa and I are standing behind a counter. And if you go into a store today, usually there is a counter with a cash register. In the general store, if you come to visit the museum, you're going to see that it's mainly counters with displays under the counters and behind glass, and the shelves behind us are full of merchandise for the store. This is what stores looked like in the pioneer days in Langley and other parts of the Fraser Valley. You did not come in and handle the merchandise in the store. You would have to ask the store owner, or perhaps the store owner employed a clerk who worked behind the counter, and you could point to what you wanted to look at, and they would bring it down off the shelf or out from behind the glass cabinet for someone to look at, and if you liked it, then you would pay for it. And as Melissa said, it is organized. It's a small store, making good use of space. It is organized into different areas. On our left here, we have some toys and china behind the glass to keep it safe and dust-free.
I love the china dolls right in the bottom. Can the camera catch that? They are porcelain heads, very fragile. They're not like your stuffed animals today, but they were very used lovingly, and a lot of times they just actually sat on your shelf because they were fragile. We have tea sets, we have checkers, little banks, and an abacus. On the back wall here, we have because there was no electricity, we have the old lamps, some of the hardware that the guys would use to come in and get for their farm machinery, use it within the gardening. Moving onwards, I don't think we can quite see yet, but we have boxes of different spices. I think, Midori, you can show the spices a bit better than I.
Now, some of you are watching this may be too young to go grocery shopping by yourself. And some of you may have been grocery shopping for way too long. That's the way I feel sometimes. And there are some brands here that we still have today in our grocery stores. Of course, this does not look like the grocery stores that we have now. Again, you would have to specifically ask someone that worked in the general store, for the can of nabob cayenne pepper or coriander seed or celery seed. We still have these spices today. The packaging may be different, the brand name may be different, but you can still buy them in grocery stores. But in the pioneer days, people weren't growing these herbs. Many of them were not growing these herbs in their yards or gardens, and they may not have had the means to be able to dry them properly. So they still had to buy things like flavorings and herbs and seasonings. And they'd also come to the general store, and behind the counter would be large sacks of flour or sugar. Again, not on the shelf for you to help yourself. You would have to ask someone for them. And pretty much everything up here. Oh, let's look at these. Hey, root beer flavoring.
I just find the packaging is so interesting. Like some are still in the paper, the metal, even the flour sack.
Or glass bottles and jars. No plastic in the pioneer days. And the other thing is, some of these, the name of the company is the same, but certainly they changed the logo on that one. And look at that price, Melissa.
13 cents.
When last time you bought pepper from the store, what did it cost?
Not 13 cents.
Was it more than 13 cents?
Of course it was, yes.
Oh, we have a price list here. There's a price list in case anybody wants to know. Can you guess what it would cost to buy a package of Jell-O in the pioneer day?
Well, I think a package of Jell-O today is $1.60 something wherever you go. What was it back then?
Well, according to this on the price list from the 1920s, and the 1920s is considered the pioneer era in Langley, one package of Jell-O, 10 cents.
Can you imagine 10 cents for Jell-O?
10 cents.
All the little kids would be going, "Mommy, I want more Jell-O."
Well, people didn't, with inflation, they didn't make as much.
No.
Then. What did you pay for, you bake, what do you usually pay for, say, a dozen eggs?
Ooh. I haven't honestly baked for a while.
Oh, really?
I'm so busy. Yeah,
Okay.
I know you bake. What did you pay?
I think the last time 1 dozen large eggs was about $4 if I don't buy organic.
That sounds right.
Now on this price list, for 3 dozen eggs, $1. So that would mean about 33 cents for a dozen eggs.
Yeah.
That's if you weren't raising your own chickens in the pioneer time.
Right,
and
right.
raising your own chickens and having your own eggs at home. Do you drink tea?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, now we do buy tea differently, and tea would have been also carried in the, if you have some coffee up here, is there some tea pins over here?
There is.
Okay,
Yep,
so if this was the 1920s and you were coming to the general store, for 3 pounds of tea, you would need to have $1.
Well, on this tin from Ridgway's Tea Company, it's 25 cents per half pound.
Oh, okay.
So it varied too,
Yes,
but
it
I know
depends.
it depending on the tea today, it's $6 for the box, roughly,
Okay.
give or take. But I noticed next to you, you have a catalog.
Mm-hmm.
I know when I was growing up, I loved the Sears Christmas catalog.
Oh, the Wish catalog.
Oh yes, and I still have the last one that they came out. I kept that because that's me in the history with the museum. I just had to keep it. This one I think is from Eaton's, as I recall.
Let me see. Let's see. So tell me. This is a copy. The Great Price Maker. Sears. It is Sears.
It is Sears.
It's an old Sears.
1906.
Copy of a Sears Roebuck. Now, the general store carries a lot of items.
It does.
A lot of different items. But they did not carry everything in stock. So Melissa had pointed out the porcelain doll earlier. That is obviously something that would have been purchased from a store or ordered from a catalog. You would not be making that at home.
No, and I also mentioned I need new shoes.
Okay.
So
Shoes.
I would go through the catalog.
And look for shoes. The general store might have a few pairs of shoes in stock, but you'd probably have to look through the catalog, order your shoes from the catalog, and wait for them to come to the general store. Now, for your shoes, were you wanting lace up or was that buttoned?
I would take either, but I do prefer the lace up.
And you can see the prices are in this, that the shoes in the 1920s were all around just under $2, up to about $2.30, and these sort of fancier, taller leather boot types would have been closer to $3 or $4 in the pioneer times. Now, with these ones, you have to remember, in the pioneer times as well, no vinyl.
No.
Your shoes and boots would all have been made out of leather. So,
What I love about these old-time shoes is they're actually very reminiscent for some shoes that are made today. I have a favorite shoemaker from Vancouver, and his shoes are very much like that.
I think
So
I
it's
know
sort
which
of
one you're talking about.
history goes around.
Yes, I do have a pair of boots bought in the last 10 years. It looked like one of these, where it's a spat look or a different color leather, and it looks like it's buttoned, but in fact, because it's a modern, contemporary boot, if you will, there is a hidden inside zip.
Yeah. But the shoe styles, the toes for the men's shoes, the height of the ankle boots for women, it's all coming around again.
Yeah. Well, in the pioneer times, women wore, we would have been wearing longer clothing, and our boots and shoes would have had more of a practical reason to keep us dry and warm. So and the boots themselves would have covered more. People drove less. They walked more. You needed the ankle support.
Yeah. And so I have found in our archives of the museum, and this I find fascinating, a 1902 edition of the Sears Roebuck catalog. And what I find interesting and unique about these old catalogs is that the writing is so small, and basically one's life is in this catalog. You can order anything. And so some of my favorites are, and one day we will actually visit the parlor in the museum, and I, as a musician, I will play you a song on the organ. So we have an organ that we can order for the home. It only costs $21.45. Today it was probably $2,000 and something dollars. We have violins. But what's unique, as I say, is there's Bibles, there are outfits, clothing, farm materials, and with the clothing you can see we've enlarged a couple different pages from actually the Eaton's catalog, and these are from the 1902 area. You can see that the styles are so different from today, 2020. The men, they're in layers. They've got the sweaters, the coats, the funky hats. Here, women, this is your ordinary day of clothing out and about. Maybe we'd be going for a day trip to Vancouver, or in that time is actually quite far away. But just for an evening to the movie theaters or a friend's, we have the dresses, the nylons, the hats. And for the youngsters out there, I think these are so cute. The boys with their hats, the little sailor outfits. And today, unfortunately, a couple of years ago, Sears, they canceled the catalogs because what do we do now? We use internet. Today, I actually just got an Amazon parcel, and it still excites me to get something in the mail. So this is what we used to do at the store as well. And can you guys imagine yourself in one of these outfits? Your son in his little peach cap.
We have two large items here on the counter that Melissa is standing behind them. Now I know what they are from volunteering with the school programs at Langley Centennial Museum. Melissa, why don't you tell the camera or the audience what those are?
Well, the two big items here is one, this Goldie big thing is actually a scale. So they might weigh sugar, flour on this. This screen machine is actually a cheese cutter. So you would have a big round block of cheese, and this would lift up. I can't do it because it is tied for safety, but it would lift up and you would cut your triangle of cheese. We also have, not so big, but we have brown paper that the cheese and even meat, if it was in stock, would be wrapped in. We would have string. I would actually show you the string. And I know it's hard to see from because of the video, but great big long spool of string, and the parcels would be wrapped with the string and maybe sealed with brown tape, if you can see. So it would just pull and then cut off. So that was sort of the packaging and wrapping. They had no fabric bags. They had no cloth bags.
Plastic.
Or plastic. I was just going to hit that to the plastic. But some things that did come in fabric, though, were the flower. And we'll get to that in 1 second as we move. As we move down the store. So we have the the fabric flower bag. And outside of the museum, I am an artist, and I do like to upcycle. And this is one of the most intriguing upcycling items that there is from back in the day. A flour sack would be sewn into bloomers, or what some might know today is underwear. So how would you feel wearing a flour sack as your underwear? Would you wear a flour sack underwear?
Is it cotton?
It is cotton.
Cotton would be fine. Not the scratchy stuff.
No, and so some of the other things are, this is interesting. Midori, any idea what this might be?
Well, I know it shouldn't be kept with a bag of flour.
No, it goes under the bed. It's actually a chamber pot. So it's one of the unique items in the store that you will find.
Because in the pioneer times in Langley and in the Fraser Valley, most houses did not have indoor plumbing, including washrooms. That was the washroom. And if you wanted something a bit nicer than the chamber pot Melissa just showed you, that marvelous catalog we saw earlier, you could order a very nice set, or just a set of nicer chamber pot. And depending how many people you had in the house, you would probably want one of those for every bedroom, or at least to go under every bed.
A gazanda.
A gazanda. But does not go under the flour sack.
And above the flour sack and the chamber pot, we have the post office. So as a child, I loved writing to my pen pals all over the country, all over the world. It didn't take as long as it did back then to post a letter, but the post office was part of the general store. You would have little slots, so they would be numbered to your home or your family. But you can see within here, they're all brown paper packages tied up with string. And let's see, we're gonna pick one out. We have a postcard. We still send postcards today. And so little stamps, parcels. Parcels still came in, as I say, the brown paper packages, and the big one that Midori has.
The big parcels would also come in. They would not have had mail delivery to the house, which is why the general store has a post office. Now, this kind of parcel could be a special present. It could also be something that was ordered from a catalog to be delivered to the general store.
My boots.
Your boots. Bigger china doll or porcelain doll. And you would probably have to really order in advance. Mm-hmm. Not like today, where you can order and you might get your order within 1 or maybe 2 weeks or even less than 1 week.
Yeah.
If you were wanting to order your boots in time for fall, you would probably want to order them by the end of June to make certain they arrived here when fall weather started and you were going to need them. And again, if you were giving a china doll or a special toy that had to be ordered through a catalog and you wanted it here for perhaps Christmas, you would be wanting to order that beginning of October to make certain, because most of the catalogs were based in Montreal or Toronto. And your order would go through by mail. Mm-hmm. They would process it in person, and the order would be sent out by mail. And remember, pioneer times, there's no air mail. It's not coming by airplane. It'll be coming by automobile and or train.
Horse and buggy sometimes too.
Horse and buggy.
If it's a little community.
You know, yes, in the very rural parts of Langley in the pioneer days, they still would have been using a lot of horses and buggies even into the 1920s.
Yeah. So we have this part of the communication that in the pioneer days they used, but we also have a special item in the corner used for local communication. Can you talk about that, Midori?
Now, this was one of my favorite things in the general store, and growing up, a few families that I knew also had a wall phone. This is a telephone. This is an early telephone, an early wall telephone. Now, when I was a child growing up, there were still a few family friends and family members that had a telephone that was attached to the wall in their house. Not like this. Some of them had an antique one made out of wood and metal like this, but a lot of them it was the telephone of the era from the 60s or 70s that was still attached to the wall. Now you might be asking why is there a telephone here? Businesses today have telephones, but in the pioneer time, telephones were not in every house. So if someone was needing to make a phone call, they would perhaps pay a small amount of money to the store owner to use the telephone in the store. And if someone was wanting to actually speak to you on the phone, knowing that you did not have a telephone, they might call the store to say, I would like to speak to Melissa on Monday at 4:30 p.m. Melissa would get the message to be at the store for 4:30 p.m. on Monday so she could receive the telephone call from perhaps an aunt in Vancouver or an uncle or cousin in New Westminster, mainly for local. You would have to speak into this, and you would have to hold this to your ear like this, and you can turn it to get the connection. And you would actually have to speak to a telephone operator to connect you to whatever number you were wanting to speak to. It wasn't all automatic like it is today or behind the scenes. You have to speak to the operator, and sometimes if it's a small community, you could even actually ask to speak to, I would like to speak to Roger Smith in New Westminster, and it did not have as many people back then. There might have only been one Roger Smith in New Westminster, and the operator would know exactly who you were wanting to speak to and how to connect you to that person that you were wanting to call.
An interesting item on this side, it is actually an antique grab all. And I'm actually going to, there's two hooks that you grab, and it's a little rusty, but I'll show you how. I would go onto my ladder or my step, and so I could pick something up from that.
You might not be able to see it in the shot, but the shelves behind Melissa and I are quite tall. They're probably close to 8 feet tall, and not everyone would have been able to reach the items on the top shelf. If they were organized, they would have put the items on the top shelf that they would not be expected to be getting a lot of. But if someone wanted to look at one of the pots for cooking on the top shelf, she could bring that down and grab it.
I won't do it because it's just kind of, they're all antiques and they're all part of our collection.
And closer to our eye level, we have items that would have been more commonly asked for at the general store. Near Melissa, we have some bolts of fabric. We also have some other, we have some binding tape and zigzag tape. There's a clock, which might actually not be for sale. It might actually be one of the clocks for the store, because not everyone wore a wristwatch then. And of course, this is before smartphones and Fitbits. Just below the sewing, like I said, as a general store, we have some items for laundry. And the laundry in the 1920s and in the pioneer days would have been all mainly by hand or done with some early form of washing machines. And they did not have the detergent and items that we do today. So they would have had to buy a detergent or a laundry soap if they did not make that sort of thing themselves at home. We also have some whitening items. We have ammonia for cutting grease, which also would have been used for regular cleaning around the house, not just if you got a grease mark on your clothing. We also have starch. I see a container of starch, and that would have been used for ironing, which was very common in the pioneer age. Everyone had clothing that needed ironing. There is no man-made or synthetic fibers, either for household items or for clothing. And a lot of cotton, a lot of linen would have been used, and they all needed to be ironed, or you'd be walking around with wrinkled and rumpled clothing. And the men's collars back then would have had extra starch, so they'd be nice and upright and very crisp. So if you had your own household and you did your own laundry at home, you did not have it sent out to be done, you would be needing all of these items from the general store to do your laundry at home.
The favorite part of this end of the store that I love, and I have such a sweet tooth, are the jars of candy and confectionery. Little box of sticky licorice, gumdrops, jelly beans, licorice sticks, more gumdrops, and hard rock candy. A lot of times, and I'm sure you've experienced this too as a docent, Midori, we would have little children coming through, and they're, oh, can I have one of those? Well, this is display. It is old, as I say, it is for display, but it gets you that excitement that this is what part of the general store was. The general store was for everyone. It was a community gathering point. And with that note, I think it's almost time to close up, isn't it?
It is. I have a lot of retail experience, and this looks somewhat like some of the cash registers I have used working in customer service and retail, but definitely not like what you would see in a store today. This is metal and glass. There's nothing computerized about this. I remember my mother telling me that even working in retail in the 60s, they actually had to manually add up things in their head, and or if there was a discount, if there were sales, like a sales or something on special, they would have to be able to calculate the discount and put it in. But I'm certain then, in the pioneer time, as today, a general store, at the end of the day,
You had to close out.
you have to cash out. And it looks like they had a pretty good day today in the sales. And I don't think this one even does any printed receipts like some later ones would do. But like I said, they'd have to cash it out. They probably put the money away if they had any cash in a safe place.
Would it always be cash?
No, some people might buy things on credit, so they might have a ledger book where they have the names of the families or the individual, where they keep track of who's buying things on credit. And perhaps if they had paid some of their bill, their ledger, their tab, if you will, they might mark that off. And they probably put any cash and the ledger book, the credit ledger book, in a safe place overnight. They probably would not keep it out front, just like stores today. They put the cash, they put cash away, they put all the receipts away until they can send it to the bank.
Excellent. Well, I just want to thank you for joining Midori and I at the Langley Centennial Museum. In the beginning, we said that we were both docents, and we would love for more docents to join us in the fall and in the spring. It's well worth your time.